Hi, and welcome to Build a Store Database in SQL, offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. My name is Scott Bartow, and what we'll be doing today is we will be using a, um, SQL editor through W3 Schools. And so if you look at my screen right now, this is the editor that we're going to be using. And what I'll do is in the editor box, I'll put in the address for the website where I'm at. So it's www.w3schools.com/SQL/try SQL.asp ? File name equals try SQL_select_all. And if you look up above in on my screen, you can see the address that I'm in. So this is the try SQL editor in W3 Schools that I'll be using because I didn't want you to have to download a database onto your own machine to be able to do this work. So that is the address that I want you to go out to when you're trying this exercise. And so with W3 Schools text editor for SQL, you've got the editor box below it in green. You have a green button that says Run SQL. When you click on that, it will execute the SQL, and then below that it has results, and it'll give you the results of your queries or whatever data management SQL that you're typing in. And now off to the right, you'll see a listing of the tables for this database. And W3 Schools already has set up tables like customers, categories, employees, order details, orders, products, shippers, suppliers. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be creating a store that is called Paddywhack. And what Paddywhack sells is knickknacks. So if you've ever heard the nursery rhyme, knick-knack, paddywhack, give the dog a bone. Well, so I came up with the name Paddywhack for the store, and what the store is going to sell is knickknacks. And when you're creating a database and tables and column names and everything, it's very helpful to put it down on paper first, just so you can actually see it, a hard copy of what you're trying to create. And so that's what I've done is I've put the table names with the columns inside the tables on a piece of paper, and then I was able to type in the SQL to create the tables and insert records, and that's what I did before the class. And so if you're ever doing database work, I recommend that you do that also. Put it on paper first, and then that way you don't have to go back after you've created tables or columns and make modifications to them. So let's get started. What we're going to do first is we're going to create a products table. All right. This exercise is going to include 4 tables. There's going to be a PW products table. PW stands for the store name, Paddywhack. So a PW products table, a PW orders table, a PW order details table, and finally a PW customers table. All right, and these tables they're all going to be, this is a relational database, which means the tables relate to each other. So you can connect them, you can join them, and have the data be pulled from multiple tables in different ways. So the first table we're going to create is PW products. And what we're going to do is, the way to create a table is to type in create I'm sorry. I put the SQL commands in capital letters. So you want create table, and the table name, which is PW products, and followed by a space, and then a parenthesis, and then I hit the enter key a few times to go down several lines because I'm going to close out this with a closing parenthesis. Before I forget, I like to put it down at the bottom, and then you end your SQL statements with a semicolon. Now, in between the create table and the closing parenthesis, we're going to indent, and we're going to put in the first column name, and that first column name is going to be product ID, capital I, ID, followed by a space, and then let's see what else we need. Okay. So we have the column name, and then followed by the data type, which is going to be int for integer. And then this first column is going to be the primary key. So primary, and I'm going to capitalize this because it's a command, primary key. And then I'm also going to make it not null. So this column will not be allowed to have nulls in it. It has to have a value because it's the key for the table. So I can't make it not null. Okay. And then I end it with a comma and hit enter, go down to the next line, and we're going to add the next column name. So which is going to be product, capital N name. And this is going to be a variable character. So varchar, and I'll make it nice and big. We have plenty of space, so 255 characters long. And this I'm also going to make not null because I want every product to have a product name. And the next column is going to be unit. I'll make that varchar 255, followed by a comma, and lastly I'll have price. And I'll give that a data type of int for integer. And let's see. And why don't we make the price also? Let's make the price also a not null. Because I have to have a price for every product. And that column cannot be left blank. So you can see I have, after the last column price, I have the closing parenthesis followed by a semicolon. All right, so PW products is our table name. Product ID is one column. That's the primary key. Product name, unit, and price. All right, so I'm gonna hit run SQL. All right, that's going to create my one table. Now, let's see. Under result on the left, it says you have made changes to the database. And if you look over to the right, under the listing of table names, we just added PW products, the last table at the bottom of the list. And right now it has 0 records, right? So let's see. So now I'm going to comment out this create table command that we just did. And the way to comment it out in this W3 Schools SQL editor is just with a dash dash. And you can see the line turns green when I use dash dash to comment it out. We're just going to keep it around because you can only have one like SQL commands going at one time. All right, so I commented those out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add insert records into the table we just created. So if you look to the right, you see PW products, the table we just made, and it has 0 records in it right now. So we're going to add some records to it. And the way to add records to a table in SQL is with the insert into command. So insert into space, and we're inserting it into the table PW products. And then give it a opening parenthesis. Actually, I'm not going to do a space. So after the table name PW products, I'll do a opening parenthesis. And here I'm going to list the columns that I want to insert into. So what we have is we have product ID, comma, product name, comma, unit, and price, followed by a closing parenthesis. Hit enter, and then the line underneath, you have the SQL command values, followed by an opening parenthesis. And here we're going to add the values that line up with the columns that we just listed above. And let's say, okay, so we're going to have the value 1 for the product ID, followed by a comma. And then the first product name is going to be Whoopee Cushion. And this is a string, so you have to surround it with quotes, either single quotes or double quotes. And then a comma. And the next field is the unit, which is going to be 25 in box. Followed by a comma, and the price is going to be $23.99. $23.99. Now you can't. $23.99 is a number, so you can't put like a $sign here, because that would make it a string, right? And we wouldn't be able to do any calculations using this price column value. So you simply put 23.99 for the price. Okay, you close that out with a closing parenthesis, and then give it a comma because we're going to add several more records. So what we'll do here is we will copy this. And then give it a space after values. And we will put it right underneath previous one. And we're going to give it 5 records. So I copy and paste that row 5 times for different values. Now remember, the first column we're giving a value to is the product ID, which is a primary key, and it cannot be null, and it has to be unique. So I'm going to change these. So that's second record will be 2 for the product ID, and the third record will be, third record is going to be 3. Fourth record will be 4. And 5. All right, and then the next product is going to be a Slinky. And that's going to be 1 per box. 1 per box. And we'll give it a price of $5.50. Next one. We have Shocker Gum Pack. How many in a box? We have 10 of those. Price $15.45. 15.45. Fourth product is Silly Putty. Is Silly This should be 15 in the box. Price $32.99. Kind of pricey. And the final product is going to be a glow sticks. Glow sticks. There's only been 3 in the box. 3 per box. Price is going to be $2.30. And that's it. And you can't have a since the 5th product is that row of values is the last item we're going to insert into our table. We can't have a comma at the very end there. So after the value 2.30, you do a closing parenthesis and then get rid of the comma, and we can do a semicolon to end our SQL statement. And this should PW products. So we're doing an insert into the table PW products we want to add insert values into the product ID, product name, unit, and price columns. And we're ready to run. So we're going to have 5 products, and I will run SQL. Under results, it says you have made changes to the database. Rows affected 5 because we added 5 rows. Off to the right, you can see PW products has 5 records, whereas before our insert into it had 0 records. So let's comment out these lines now. So with a dash, we can comment out each line, and let's query our table by writing a simple query. All right. So to query a table, we're going to use select. So capitalize select, and I'll use an asterisk to display all the columns of that table. And then on the next line, we use from, space, and then the table name. So PW products, and followed by semicolon. Okay, if I run this, under results, it'll show me, it'll say number of records, 5, and then on my screen, you can see you have the column names, product ID, product name, unit, and price, and then the values for each row under each column. All right, so that's how you do a simple query of the data, right? And by using select asterisk, you are querying the data and you're just looking for all the columns in that table. All right, if I just wanted to see, if I just wanted to select the product name, I would do select and do the product, the table name that I want to select. All right, so I do select product name from PW products, run the SQL, and now my results say just the product name and what the values are for the product names. All right, so let's comment that out. All right, okay. All right, let's move on to the next table. All right, so that's one table. All right, now that's PW products. The next table we're going to create is called PW orders. All right, so the way to create the table is create table. The name of the table, which is going to be PW for Paddywhack. That's our store name. Capital O orders. And then you're going to do a space, open parenthesis, hit enter a few times, close parenthesis with the semicolon, and then go back up underneath create table, hit tab to indent, and we're going to do our first column name, which is going to be order ID space. This is going to be an integer data type, and once again we'll do this as the primary key. So it has to be unique. We're also going to say, hey, this should not be null. Not null. All right, hit comma. Next, we're going to have customer ID. And customer ID is going to be an int also. And this one also should not be null, right? Because you can't have an order without a customer ordering it. So you have to have a customer ID. You have to tie this order to a customer. So customer ID cannot be null. Next, we're going to have the order date. Order date. Now, this data type is a little bit different. It's going to be a capital DATE, all right? And when you use DATE, it's going to be in the format of YYYY dash MM dash DD. So four character year, followed by a dash, followed by a 2-character month, followed by a dash, followed by a 2-character day. And that's the way we're going to have to enter that data. All right, so that's order date. And then the last column is going to be status. And that's going to be a varchar variable character, 255. And that's it. All right, and get rid of the space under the status. And remember the last column that you're creating, you don't have a comma at the end of it. So I have status varchar, parenthesis 255 parenthesis, and no comma after that one. And then you close it out with the closing parenthesis and semicolon. All right, so I think we're all set to run this, to create this PW orders table. Everything looks good. All right, so I'm going to run it. Says you have made changes to the database. You look over to the right, and now we have a PW orders table of 0 records. So what do we have to do? First, we're going to comment out our create statement we just made. All right. So now we have to do our insert into. All right, so capital insert into space, then the table name, PW orders, followed by a opening parenthesis, and then we have to have the column names. All right, so the first column is orders ID, parenthesis, followed by customer ID, followed by order date. Cancel. Order date, followed by status, closing parenthesis, hit enter, and then you have to enter the values command, followed by opening parenthesis. Then now we have to add values. All right, so orders. All right, so order ID. I'm sorry, it's not. So in the insert into, it's not orders ID, it's order ID. Customer ID, order date, and status. All right, so the first one is going to be number 1 for that order. And we'll give it number 2 for the customer ID. And we're going to give it a date of, remember, it's in the format of year, month, month, or dash, month, dash, day. So 2021 dash 03 dash 01. And this is a string, so wrap it in single quotes or double quotes. And what do we have next? We have status. All right, so this is going to be a status of capital R received. We're only going to have 3 statuses. We're going to have ordered, shipped, and received. received, meaning that the customer has received the order. And that's it for this. I'll do a closing parenthesis and a comma. And now I'm going to copy this. We're going to have 4 orders. So copy that row underneath the first row. All right, so now it's in the correct format. And you should change the order ID to the second row should be 2, third row 3, fourth row 4. Customer ID, I just have the first row, I have 2. And then I do 1 for the second row, 1 for the third row. Will be that customer, and for the fourth row, for the fourth order, I have the customer 3. And for the dates, the first date was 3/1, second date's going to be 3/5, third date 3/10, fourth date 3/15. And the status is we have received. Second one is going to be shipped. Third one will be shipped. And the fourth one will be ordered. That looks right. So, except for, remember your last row, the fourth row, right after ordered, closing parenthesis, you don't want that comma. All right. So if you left the comma in and you ran the SQL, it would just blow up. It would give you an error telling you that there's a syntax error. All right, here we go. I run my SQL. It tells me you have made changes to the database, rows affected 4. Look over to the right and you see PW orders, the table on the bottom of the table list, now has 4 records added to it. And what I want you to do is comment out or insert into. Okay, hit enter, and then we want to select all the columns of the table we just added. Oops. Here, select, and the way we select all the columns, we query all the columns of the table, is select star or asterisk. And then we do from the table we want to look at. And PW orders is our table that we just created and inserted records into, followed by a closing semicolon for SQL. And now I'll run the SQL. And you can see under my results, I have order ID, customer ID, order date, and status are the column names. And we have values for each row under each column. All right. Let's comment out our query statement and move on to trying to create the next table. All right. So next table is, right now we have products and we have orders. And what we need is order details. And that is where we'll go next. All right, so order details. Let's see. Okay, so here. All right, so once again, create table. PW for store name, order, details, space, open paren, hit enter a few times, close paren, and semicolon. Come back up under create, hit tab to indent, and we're gonna have a primary key for this table would be order detail ID. So order detail ID space, and it's going to be an int, of course. And then we have primary P, not no. And then a comma, hit enter to go to the next line. The next column name is going to be the order ID. That's an int, and that also cannot be null. And then we have a product ID, right? Because you can't have an order without a product ID. So that's an int, and that cannot be null either. And lastly, we're going to have the quantity that they ordered. That's an int, and that cannot be null. Because if I don't know how much they ordered, I can't really fulfill the order. All right, so create table, PW order details, and detail ID, int, everything is not null. And I don't have a comma after the very last column. And I close it with a closing parenthesis and a semicolon. All right, so I'm going to run this guy. Look to the right, you see PW order details. All right, let's comment that out real fast, and then we will be able to create a final table. All right. Next, we're going to do an insert into. And this would be PW orders. Order details, sorry. Order details followed by an opening parenthesis, and then we just need we need to list out the column names we want to add values to. So order details ID, comma, order ID, comma, product ID, comma, quantity, closing paren. Then we have the command, oops. So under insert, we have values, parenthesis, and we're going to have what? 1, comma, 1122. 1 for the order ID, 2 for the product ID, and a quantity of 2. Comma. All right. And we are going to have, since we have 4 orders, we have to have 4 order details. Like that. All right, so the primary key has to be unique. The order details ID. Oops, I'm not making it unique. So the first record is 1, second record is 2, third record will be 3, fourth record 4. And then for the order ID, that also has to be unique, right? So first record will be 1, second 2, third 3, fourth 4. Product ID can be whatever we want. I'm going to use 2. And we have products 1 through 5. So I'll use 5 for the second record, 3 for the third record, 1 for the fourth. And then finally we have quantity. I'm going to order first record's 2, second record will be 5, third record 10, and the fourth record is going to be 3. And that's it for our order details table. Insert into, as it should. All right, I'm going to run it. Okay, there's an error. Could not prepare statement. Table PW order details has no column named order details ID. Order detail ID. What do we call it? Let's say. So if you look up above where you commented out, we created order detail ID. All right, so I didn't call it order details by accident. So in my insert into, I can't have order details ID because that's not how we created that column name. So we created the column name order detail ID. All right, so if I run that, that worked fine. So you have made changes to the database rows affected for. PW order details. Now on the right hand side, you can see that that table now has 4 records. All right, so let's query it let's comment out or insert into. And then let's, oops. So remember the comment is a dash dash in SQL. And the database that W3 School seems to be using is called SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. And with Microsoft SQL Server, they use dash dashes for the comments in SQL. All right, hit enter. Let's query the data real fast. So it's going to be a select star from, and the table name is PW order details, semicolon to close out the SQL statement. You run your SQL, and you can see we have plenty of data. So the next tables, what we're going to do is we are going to let's say we got, what we're going to do is I'm going to comment out the query that we just did. And so we don't spend too much time. Let's create the final table, which is PW customers. So once again, create table, and the table name PW customers space parenthesis. Hit enter a few times, closing paren, semicolon. Come back up under create, hit tab, and let's see what we have for create customers. And this is our biggest table. And what we're going to have is customer and that's an int, and it's a primary key. No. And comma. And then what do we have? We have a contact name. That's a bar car 255. And that can be null. Sometimes, you know, if you have a customer, don't necessarily have a contact name. And then we have address. Bar car 2 or bar car 255, comma. I'm going to copy that out. Copy the address line and paste it. Let's say we have city, we have country, and we have the postal code. So I change this address to a city. Change this line to a postal code. capital C code, and get rid of the varchar 255 because this is an int, right? The postal code is a number, so it's going to be an integer. Then we're going to have what? We're going to have country. And that is varchar 255. Get rid of the comma at the very end after country. And get rid of the space, and close it with a closing parenthesis and semicolon. And customer ID, PW customers. All right, so, okay, we're going to run that. You're going to change to the database, look to the right, and you see PW customers. All right, so now comment out that code. All right, we're going to just practice a little bit with this. Comment out your create. You want to make sure you still have it. All right. Now, if I just wanted to get rid of the table altogether, all right. So we created PW customers, but it's not the way we want it. We want to start from scratch. The way to do this is you do a drop. So it's the command drop space table, and then the table name, PW customers, semicolon. All right. When I run this, it's going to wipe out PW customers. So you will no longer see it under the table list on the right-hand side. So I run it, and you make changes to the database. You look to the right, and where's my PW customers? Oh, it's gone. So that's how you drop a table altogether. All right. So let's get rid of that command. You go back up, uncomment out the create PW customers table code. And run it. Right, so I uncommented out my create code, and now I have my PW customers code back. And what I'll do is I will now add I will comment out my create code again. All right, so now for the insert, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the script that I have. Let's see, it's just taking a little while to come up. There it is. And I'm going to copy I'm going to copy all the code to insert into this PW customers table. Okay. All right. Just because I want to show you. I want to show you some things, some ways to query the data. All right, so here is the insert command for our final table, PW customers. And we're just going to have 3 customers. And so it's insert into PW customers. We have to, we're listing out all the column names, customer ID, customer name, contact name, address, city, postal code, and country. And then we have values. We have to have a unique value for the customer ID, which is the first column. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Then we have a customer name, Fancy Farm, SNE, Inc., Neighbors Country Store. Then we have contact names. Then we have the address. We have the city. We have the postal code, and we have the country. All right, so I'm going to run this. I'll put a semicolon at the very end to close out our SQL statement. I run it. Oh, do not prepare. PW customers has no column name, customer name. All right, let's check that out. Customer name. Oh, yeah, we didn't add that, did we? All right, so what we have to do is I'll get rid of this. And once again, what we're going to do is we're going to drop. So drop table PW customers semicolon. I'll run that. It drops the table. Rid of that code. And then we're going to uncomment out the create. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the customer name, which should go in between customer ID and contact name. Customer name, and that's going to be a bar. That's going to be a bar tar parentheses 255. It's going to be not null. Oh. All right, that should do it. Contact name, address, city, postal code, country, customer name, and run. Okay, we have our table back. Unfortunately, we have to comment it out again. So by having it up above, commented out, I could see right away the mistake I made. So commenting your code is a great way to have a reference when you start doing other things to the table after you create it. All right. So next, I'm going to bring back the insert. Okay, here's our insert into for our final table. And I'm going to run my SQL. And there we go. Rows affected 3. PW customers now has 3 records. All right. All right. So let's see. All right. So let's comment out our insert into a couple things. Okay. So what do we got? So now we have our 4 tables. And so a couple things. Say I want to, all right, so on my customers table, I saw that I had a contact name for Haber's Country Store, right? The 3rd customer. And right now the contact name is Viola Jones. Well, Viola Jones left and took another job somewhere else. So now I have a new contact. All right. So the new person is going to be Jimmy Wilson. All right. So what we want to do is we want to do an update. All right. So the way to do an update is update space and then you're naming the table name. So update PW. And this is the PW customers table. Space, hit enter, and then you're doing set, space, and we are setting the column customer name. We want to do a change to customer name. And it's going to equal Jimmy Wilson. And that's a string, so it has to be surrounded by quotes. Jimmy Wilson. Hit enter. And if we wanted to change other columns, besides just the customer name, we could do that here. But and you should do that just with a single quote. All right, so say I want to change the address too. So contact name is going to go to Jimmy Wilson from Viola James, and I also want to change the address from 367 Bluebird Way to something else. So the column name is address space equals single quote. So I want to change it to 55 Larch Street. Right, so they've moved. And if that's the only other column I want to change, then you hit enter. Now, if I ran this as is, it would change every customer name to Jimmy Wilson and every address to 55 Larch Street. So we only want to change it to we only want to change it to Haber's Country Store, which has a product ID of 3. So I can do I'm going to filter the data, right? I only want to make my updates to a certain record. And so the way we filter data in SQL is with the where clause. So where, and I could do product ID equals 3, or I could do customer name equals Haber's Country Store. But product ID is the most direct way to ensure you're making the right change. So where product ID equals 3, and close it with a semicolon. All right, so when we make our change, the data is going to look a little bit different. Customer name, okay. So I'll run it. This is how you do an update. Cannot per statement, no such column product ID. I have the wrong name, wrong column name in my where clause. There is no product ID in the customer table. It's customer ID equals 3. All right, hit enter. So a lot of times when you do make a mistake and it throws an error, the clues that are given are pretty helpful. So like in this case, it says, "Hey, there is no product ID," and it made me realize I was dealing with the wrong table. So anyway, use the errors that are thrown to help you find what might be wrong. All right, so under result, it says you have made changes to database. Rows affected now are 1, right? We only made a change to the 1 row for the contact name and for the address. So now let's comment out our update, and let's do. Oops. Let's do a query. Make sure our change worked, right? So simple query. Select star from table is PW customers. All right, I'll run it. Let's say customer ID of 3. It's the 3rd row. Oh, now the customer. Oh, I made a mistake. I changed the customer name to Jimmy Wilson, and I meant to change the contact name. But the address did change correctly from 367 Bluebird Way. Now it's 355 Larch Street. All right, so let's change this back again. So we want to do another update, right? And what we can do is we can copy this update code that we have commented out. All right, come on. All right, I'll copy it. Comment out this. Let's hit our back. All right, I'm going to set. I'm not going to do this, right? Because I'm not messing with the address. So we're customer ID equals 3, but I want the customer name to go back to Haber's Country Store. So Haber's, country store. And the other field we have to correct is the contact name. Right? You only do one set when you're in the update. So it's update and then the table name. Next line is set, and then column equals whatever value you want it to change to. And then if you have more columns you want to change, then you just you only have set once. The set command. So the next one is the contact name, which is very similar to customer name. That's going to equal what? Jimmy Wilson. Save vote, and I'm going to run it. That should be good. Comment it out. Hit enter. And now let's do a simple query. Select all columns with a select asterisk from, and capitalize the SQL commands. Be consistent with that. Always capitalize those. Not that you have to, but it's just it's it's a lot more readable your code when you do it that way. So from PW customers semicolon and enter. Hit run SQL. And now you can see our third row, customer ID of 3, as the customer name is back to Haber's Country Store, and the contact name is the new correct name of Jimmy Wilson. Okay, so now, what if a customer went bankrupt or something, is no longer in business, or is no longer doing business with us? Say the second row, SNE Incorporated, is no longer doing business with us. So we want to delete that record off the table. And the way to do that is delete from, and then the table name, PW customers. Right now, if you ran this, you would wipe out every record in the table, all right, which would be 3 for the PW customers table. We don't want to do that. We only want to wipe out the customer that is no longer doing business with us, which is the second record, SNE Incorporated. So once again, we need a where clause, right? We need to filter the data. We only want to delete the filter data of the second record. So where customer ID equals 2. And close it with a semicolon. Run it. May change the databases. Rows affected are 1. If you look over to the right, PW customers now has 2 records instead of 3. And let's just do a simple query. So comment out your delete. One way we can find out how many rows are in the table. Well, let's do a simple query just to make sure. So select asterisk from, oops, didn't mean to hit that, from PW customers. All right, we should only have 2 records being displayed. Yep, and SNE Incorporated is no more. All right, so that's gone. And you notice there's no customer ID of 2. There's only 1 and 3. All right, now, if I wanted to, after doing a delete, say I wanted to count how many records are in the table, right? So instead of selecting star, we should do a select and use the function count, parenthesis, and let's count how many customer IDs there are. All right, so by using the aggregate function count in SQL, it would count how many records you're going to have, and that's what's going to return. It's not going to return any specific data or column names. It's just going to return a number, and what it should return for this table is 2. All right, so I run it, and that's what it has. All right. Now, say I wanted to do a count of how many records we have for products, right? So I'm going to count the product ID for the PW products table. All right, I'll run it. And it has 5, right? Because we know we added 5 or inserted into the table. PW products, we inserted 5 different kinds of products. All right. So that is pretty much it for this lesson called Build a Store in SQL, a store database in SQL. And you just get a little sample of what businesses do to create a database, to be able to analyze and keep track of, their inventory, their relationships with their customers, who's the biggest buyer, who should you spend the most time with because they're placing the most orders with your business. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. My name is Scott Bartow, and this class has been offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.